Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and for the first time ever, I am joined in the studio by JP Mason. Welcome. Cheers. To A State of Mind. What do you make of the studio then, JP?
Paul, I have to say, and be completely honest, I'm considered an enthusiastic person in my life by friends and co-workers, but walking in there today, it's like walking into a museum of culture that I fully embrace and associate with, which is Celtic and music, and I absolutely love it. It's way bigger than I expected. If anybody ever gets the chance to come here, you'll probably want to spend a good hour here, because there's so much to see. So I'm delighted to be here, and it's kind of weird doing it here and not sitting in my flat at my desk with a Celtic top behind me, but no, it's good to be here.
Well, I've not shown you the box of jerseys over there as well that we need to work through, Celtic jerseys and stuff like that. I know you love a Celtic jersey, JP.
It's overflowing.
Yeah. There's also a Hibs tea towel that was presented to us by Gary John Kane of the Proclaimers, Sunshine on Leith. And I said to him, it would be a very interesting debate to be had if you got two musicians to go head to head on this show, JP, one of them being with a Celtic state of mind and one being a Hibby, to talk about You'll Never Walk Alone against Sunshine on Leith in terms of what is the most powerful football anthem. And I think that would be a great debate, a great discussion point, because you've got to have respect for Sunshine on Leith. It is a tremendous football anthem, but You'll Never Walk Alone is a bit special. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I have to say, yeah, Sunshine on Leith at full pelt at Easter Road is, especially in the kind of new Easter Road, which is a pretty impressive stadium now. I've felt the full brunt of it, and it's powerful. You can't deny it. And then seeing it at the cup final, when they triumphed over evil and won the cup there, it was pretty great that day as well. And I know a lot of Hibs fans from living and working in Edinburgh, and I was delighted for them that day and delighted to see them singing that song for sure.
Now, you have had an involvement in this neck of the woods for some time through your musical journey, JP, which is ongoing, and that will filter in and out of our discussion as we go on. We've not spoken since last Thursday, obviously. Wee Declan is not with us today, but that is temporary. And can I just say that those that are missing from this week's collaborators, if you like, on A Celtic State of Mind, don't worry, they're all well, and they will be filtering back in to their seat, hopefully in the studio. So you're looking about that studio outside there, JP, and you pointed out a couple of the musical frames, and that was the Twilight Sad. And obviously you are heavily involved with that band. What are they up to now that we're free to go to gigs and we're free to get out there and watch bands live?
Well, they're writing and recording new material and have been through it all this time. Hoping and waiting for the green light to do gigs, and they've got a couple of gigs coming up at the Paisley Spree Festival next month. That's just going to be James and Andy playing. I think one of them's sold out and one of them might have a few tickets left, so they've got that coming up. And then beyond that, we'll just be sort of gearing up towards planning a tour for next year and releasing the record, whatever that may be, whatever it may be called. It's always an exciting time when the band are in that kind of embryonic stage of writing a new record, and you start to hear wee demos here and there, and you get excited about that. So I'm looking forward to what they do next, because they always like to better themselves and try and one up the last thing that they did. They're never the type of band that will just be like, oh, we'll just put anything out. So I think it's going to be good, and I'm looking forward to it.
I always find it incredible, JP, that when we started chatting and you came on to the first time you came on to Acsom was back in the day when we used to film in, Stirling. And the week before that, I had been speaking to a couple of girls I went to school with. And it just so happens that they are the sisters of one of the band members of the Twilight Sad. And it was interesting how you and I had been chatting. Then I'm down there and I didn't even know that Brendan was in the band. Right. I remember him from school. I just remember him as being a good footballer. But I'm texting you saying, you'll never guess what. But it was a bizarre scenario. And obviously from there, it has developed to the point where you are on this show every single Thursday, which is just tremendous. And we look forward to seeing the band getting back. We were at our first festival as a production team last Friday, and it was in Dalkeith in actual fact. And bands that were playing there included Kyle Faulkner and Las Vegas, as well as the Sherlocks. But here's one for you. You probably heard of the guy. I hadn't for my sins. Johnny Skinner was also playing. He was in a band previously called the Apple Scruffs.
Oh, I remember them,
yeah. So he was playing and he blew me away. I thought he was superb, really, really good. So I'll be keeping an eye out for Johnny Skinner going forward as well. But loads of good bands and loads of good Celtic fans on the bill there as well, JP.
Aye, Las Vegas, big time. I'm pretty good pals with them, known them for a long time through... I wrote one of their first ever reviews, which I think I've sent you before, actually, when they played at Cabaret Voltaire in Edinburgh, when they were a support band and they played to like 20 people, and I just got to know them that night. And then obviously most of them are Celtic fans. Paul's not. He's of a different persuasion, but James is big time Celtic. And I've actually got a picture of me and James in Heidelberg in Germany. I went there with my girlfriend at the time, thinking that Las Vegas were supporting Oasis, and they were supporting Oasis, but it was the either side of the night that I went to see them. So I saw them headline in Heidelberg, and it was amazing. It was brilliant. But I've got a picture of James, and James has got like an old school kind of like these muscle t-shirts just with the sleeves cut off, and I think he told me he got it at the Barras, and it's got a picture of Tommy Burns, a yellow picture of Tommy Burns' face in the middle. So he's played for Celtic and charity games and stuff like that, and obviously used to be a player himself. Used to play for, I think he played for Hamilton, maybe Falkirk,
Queen's Park,
Gretna.
Now, interesting enough, you mentioned Germany, so let's have a wee chat about that. Shows your mug first and foremost.
Well, cheers for choosing the St. Pauli.
I knew that you had a persuasion there for St. Pauli, and you were telling us before about your first European game, because we are going to be talking Europe today on the show. First European game at Celtic Park, was it?
Yeah, today in 1996. I've been putting up like pictures of programmes, just a couple of folk liked it and said this is really like nostalgic. Laura Bradburn said herself that she liked, brought back memories. So what we on? 9th of September 1996, Celtic 0, Hamburg 2 at Celtic Park. Got used to the sort of defeats early doors with my first game. But I mean, that looking back at the team this morning, it was like Tom, Di Canio, Van Hooijdonk and Cadete all playing at the same time, and somebody, one of the Barry, I think it was, had come back and said, I don't think that they ever really played that much together, all four of them, maybe somebody could correct us on that, I don't know, but I remember that. I remember being excited because it was under the lights and going to a game at night, but I didn't know about the Hamburg St. Pauli thing. I had no idea until being at the game, and then there was loads of St. Pauli scarves when going up, and I was like, "Why?" I said to somebody, who are these guys?" And they're like, they don't like Hamburg, and Hamburg don't like them. And a year later, I met my mate Michael, and he'd been at the away leg of the Hamburg trip, and he'd become fully immersed in the Jolly Roger, and going there, and the St. Pauli fans had kind of embraced the Celtic fans at that time, so that was, and eventually a few years later, I got to go to Hamburg Celtic away under Tony Mowbray, and we got a 0-0. Remember 2009?
Yeah.
And then obviously I've been to St. Pauli maybe 3 or 4 times, and I know everybody kind of thinks it's a bit jingoistic to be, you're a Celtic fan, you're a St. Pauli fan, how can you like all these clubs? Go to a St. Pauli game and then come back and talk to me, because it's absolutely unbelievable. And all the Celtic stuff that's happening, the Green Brigade have lifted a lot of that St. Pauli fan culture and fan atmosphere. And I've got videos of a stag do I was on in 2004 or 5. A guy called Paddy Kelleher, who was still in our my old supporters club, the Heriot Watt. And we went on a stag do, and I've got really ropey videos on YouTube of us singing, and it's all that's the way I like it, and like all of that it's all been lifted from St. Pauli. Not all of it, but a good amount of it. So I go to a game and then talk to me.
Definitely. Well, I went to Hamburg, and it was again a stag do for my brother, and the reason we went there was threefold. St. Pauli wanted to get in about the culture there and find out a wee bit more about it. The Beatles obviously were synonymous with Hamburg, and there's loads of wee cafes and different places there to visit. And Adidas, I've got quite nearby a big warehouse of trainers that I think were not distributed outside of Germany.
Right.
So my big brother, being a big sneaker freaker, he wanted to see all this kind of stuff. I find it utterly bizarre. But I was right into the St. Pauli thing. And
did you get to a game?
Well, they were playing Nuremberg that day away. Right. So we watched it in the Jolly Roger.
Oh, nice.
We watched it. And we had the iPad set up. Thankfully, the barmaid came over and gave us iPad with Celtic TV on it, because we watched Celtic playing in Inverness when Tony Watt scored a couple of goals up there. So it was a great experience, but it is relevant to today, talking about friendships with clubs, because we're going to use this as a segue into talking about one of our new signings, because the tagline today is Giakoumakis, Jota, Scales, Juranović and Carter-Vickers. Who starts against Ross County? Who will make their Celtic Park debuts against Ross County on Saturday? I won't have a chance to talk about the game until Saturday, because there will be Jim, Laura and Tony on tomorrow's Bulletin. So let's have a wee chat about that. And the relationship aspect of it is that we've got another new club in our canon in Catholic United. I love the way that that's developed over the last few weeks. And I was reading my interest on Twitter that their supplier of jerseys, JP, cannot keep up with demand.
I knew it.
So they can't put in another order for another few months or something. They've completely run out of jerseys, pin badges, player sponsorship. I mean, it would be good to sponsor something, but they ran out. So we did contact them for Acsom to sponsor a player. And it's all about these friendships. And obviously he has been asked about it. Cameron Carter-Vickers was asked about it on one of the Celtic TV interviews. We hope to get an interview with him as well. There was one set up earlier this week with Jota, and we will be showing the last couple of bits of footage from that today. We are in a couple today, one with Liam Scales. That's Kevin Graham that's speaking to Liam Scales. Cool. We're in another press conference with Fran Alonso, and it's Colin Watt who's looking after Fran, because they're quite pally now, I think. And yesterday's thing, it was yesterday, with Giakoumakis has been postponed to next week. So it's great to get in about these new players, but Cameron Carter-Vickers, the reason I bring him up is because let's have a look at the potential questions or dilemmas that Ange is going to have on Saturday. By bringing in Carter-Vickers, does that give him a dilemma, or do you still think that the first two picks at centre-back at the moment are Welsh and Starfelt until such times, JP, that one of them is suspended or injured or loses their form?
I mean, I think with the fact that we've got the European game next Thursday, I think there's got to be possibly having one eye on that to maybe think about bringing somebody in. But these guys haven't played. If you're wanting to play, your first choice is Welsh and Starfelt on Thursday in Spain, then these guys haven't. I mean, Welsh hasn't. Welsh played for under-21s, didn't he?
He did, aye.
Yeah. But Starfelt wasn't involved in the Sweden games, so you don't want them being that. If you're going to go with them and you're just going to chuck these guys in, because I don't know how much football Carter-Vickers has played, so far this year, not even this season, but like this year. So it might be an idea to start Carter-Vickers. I would be more inclined to go with who you're going to play with on Thursday, on Saturday. So I don't think there's going to be just this huge introduction of all the new players. Might be completely wrong. I don't know how to second guess a manager that I've only known for a couple of months in the job. That in previous managers just went with their tried and tested quite a lot. Until such time as it was an injury or a suspension or something, and then they introduced a new player. But I would tend to think that he would go with his strongest side, despite the fact that it's Ross County at home. Ross County beat us last season at home.
Yes.
So we can't take this game lightly. It would be a very good indication of how far we've come in a year to show like what we do on Saturday. Do we go out and absolutely blitz them like we have done in the previous 2 home games, or is it going to be, Ichi Peachy? I don't know, but I'd like to think it's the former, especially with the firepower that we've got. I know we've lost a bit in Christie and Edward, but we've brought in, Abada. Hopefully Kyogo Furuhashi's okay after this injury scare on international duty. And then, you've got Jota as well, who looks fit and firing. And Giakoumakis as well, who I think has been playing, might be wrong. Has he been playing so far this season? Has he played any games?
I need to check if he's played this season. I've kind of focused my attention on that incredible season he had in the last campaign, JP. It would be good to check that out. But this also leads us into the fact that we're coming off the back of an international break, but it's not a break, and you concern yourself with things like, Kyogo comes off early against China. Just when you're looking at the prospect of the 3-pronged kind of attack of Jota, Kyogo and Abada, which is a frightening prospect. And then you're thinking, well, Rogic, you've got the travel that he's had to endure to come back and perhaps start on Saturday. You've got players like Welsh who played for the under-21s, actually captained under-21s, and there might be wee strains and sprains here and there, unfortunately. And with a squad like Celtic, you've always got, well into double figures, the amount of people who are on international duty. I think Starfelt got half an hour for Sweden. Right. But I'm a bit reluctant to throw people in willy-nilly unless it is absolutely necessary. But there are a few, as I say, areas in the team against Ross County, and it would be interesting to know. So you're going to go with Welsh and Starfelt. You'd be quite happy to stick with those 2.
I think with an eye on Thursday, I think that would make sense. I'm curious to see Juranović at right back, just to see how. I thought he played as well as he could be expected to against Rangers at left back in an uncomfortable position. But a lot of people commented on the whole way that it upset the balance, in the way that it just didn't look completely natural, the way he was having to take the ball and receive the ball. So I don't want to just bounce Anthony Ralston out of the team because he doesn't deserve to be dropped. And plus he hasn't played over this period as well. So again, are you not playing Ralston on Saturday and then playing him on Thursday, and then he's not kicked the ball for a couple of weeks? I think you've got to have an eye on Thursday as to who you play on Saturday. So it's quite intriguing to be analysing this team on Saturday, because you don't really know what's going to happen. We've suddenly got options.
Yes,
we've been so starved of options in all areas of the park, and now we actually have options. And hopefully in the next month or so we'll have even more options with Julian coming back, and Mikey Johnston, whoever else, and Greg Taylor's obviously out at the moment, so he might be forced to play Juranović at left back again.
This is one of the dilemmas, and I'm going to throw another name into the mix as well. But before I do so, you mentioned Julian. Where are you on the Julian question? I remember you bringing up that moment where he's collided with the post.
100%. I'll stand by that. And
I think, see, when I look back to Julian, there was quite a lot that I really, really loved about him with regards to the fact that he could actually score goals from defence. Some people would suggest that him and I, in terms of a partnership, were the best partnership we've had for a while. And, probably the stats would suggest that was the case. He's coming back in. There's a huge amount of expectancy that he's going to come back and sort out a lot of the problems we've had at the back, particularly at set pieces. But when we think back to when he was there, we tended to have some issues, the same issues at set pieces when he was in the team as well, JP. And I know that when a player's out, Bobo Balde style, they become the best player in the world, or Derek Riordan, play Riordan, but maybe he's not showing it at training every single day when Strachan's training him.
If he's even at training.
If he's even there. So there is this thing around Julien. I do still view him as the first choice centre-back to play alongside another. The fact that Carter-Vickers has come in, I think means that Urhoghide will not be considered for a first-team jersey at the moment, because by all accounts he's not quite there at that level. So it's good to have that option on the bench that is a more solid option, particularly in Europe. I mean, I wouldn't like to throw in Urhoghide in one of these European games, for example, if someone gets injured.
No.
So Jullien, when he does come back, and the fact that he's been named in the European squad for the Europa League would suggest that it's imminent. Is he the first pick, and how pivotal is his return?
I don't think he's... I mean, look, we paid, £7 million for him? You like to think if you've paid that level of money for somebody that, you're going to get a return. I mean, you come back from an injury, you'd never know how it was going to go. I mean, that injury that he sustained against Dundee United was absolutely horrendous. I don't think I've winced as badly at an injury probably since Larsson. When he cracked his knee, you just knew straight away that's really, really bad. I don't think anybody possibly could have thought that
it was the clunk as well. You could hear it because the stadium was empty.
Of course, yeah. But I think anybody could have foreseen that it would be a year that he would be out. I mean, that is a hell of a long time to be out, and it was so avoidable. I know people have sort of said, "Oh, if you had a decent goalkeeper, he wouldn't have had to do that," and blah blah blah. I mean, these things happen in football. It's just unfortunate that it could have been half a metre either side of that post, and he'd have probably just hit his, his shoulder or whatever. But it was the fact that it was his knee bang on. So I think Jullien had his critics. There's no doubt about it. Before he, got that injury, there was nobody that was saying that he was, he's not an international. For example, we paid $7 million for him, and he's not an international. He's nowhere near the French team. Never. I don't think has been. But you'd think he'd be good enough at our level to be a commanding centre-half. And I would think if he gets back to fitness, he's got to be a first name in the team sheet, and then AN other after that. I really hope he still wants to be here. I hope he's not one of the players, because let's face it, he could be one of the players that Neil Lennon was referring to after Ferencvaros. We don't know. Nobody's ever really confirmed. I think we can gather that it is Ayer, Edward, Christie, but could he have been one of the people that wanted to leave? We don't know. I mean, he certainly gives the impression online, from his posts and everything, that he's into it and happy in Glasgow and at Celtic. So I hope that is the case, and he comes back and he's got the bit between his teeth and wants to put right what's gone wrong in the last 18 months, because he enjoyed success and he said to sit in the sideline and watch all this just unravel, and he's not. I can't imagine how frustrating that would be as a footballer if you actually give a SHIT about what you're doing, to be able to just sit there and watch this, absolute nightmare unfold in front of you. So that motivation surely should be within him to come back and go, right, let's try and sort this out.
Yeah, I think about him, and I just want him to get back into that kind of way where he plays, uninterrupted for quite a spell, because you think about when he came in, and for some unknown reason in the European game, the Cluj game it was, where we got knocked out, the decision was made by the then manager Neil Lennon to put him and Bolingoli on the bench, who were brand new signings, £10 million worth of new players, to the point where I'm a big fan of playing players in their position. So rather than play Callum McGregor left back, why not play the new left back that we've just signed? So he missed out in that game, and that frustrated the life out of me. You're thinking about big performances against the likes of Lazio and Rangers, for example, but then people throw in, Lyndon Dykes spooked him, he couldn't play against a big imposing forward, etc., and that kind of thing. Then he's part and parcel of the Dubai fiasco, even though he shouldn't have been there. It wasn't his decision, he's been dragged along, and so the whole thing there, I just want him to get back. When he comes back from an injury layoff, he then has his big injury against Dundee United and he's off for 9 months. I just want him to get back into the way of playing for 4, 5, 6 months with no issues whatsoever, because I still think, although we've had good performances out of him, we've still to see the best from him. And it sounds strange, you're saying he's not an international. Absolutely. We signed Eddie at 9 million, who hadn't made his international breakthrough, or, full international, but he was part of that under-20 World Cup winning squad with France. And I just think that every single time he gets going, something happens and it derails his kind of progress with Celtic. Yeah. I still think, even though we signed him a wee bit later, he was a bit like Boyata. I think Boyata was 26 when we signed him. He still probably viewed Celtic as that kind of stepping stone to another move. I still think as a player, he felt that he was going to get that big move. But because of injuries and everything else that's happened, it's just never materialised. And it would be great if he just comes in, shores up that defence, gets a partnership with, be that Starfelt, Carter-Vickers, Welsh, whoever it is playing, their best football, with Joe Hart at the back. And we're just a completely different team to play against at that stage, JP. So I want to look forward to, and as I say, he's in the European squad. I'm always keen to get in about these comments, JP. So let's start off with Barry McGinty. Thank you for tuning in, and you're on YouTube. First to leave a like and a comment. Hail, hail. I listen to the podcast every morning. Barry, welcome to the show. And it is important to give us a thumbs up on YouTube, because obviously there are some lurkers out there, JP, who don't even watch the show, who like to give us the thumbs down. And I've noticed by mentioning that we get about 200 more than we normally do. So thanks for all your support, guys. Paddy Lavery, how many of the Acsom team are attending the awards night? Listen, you brought it up, so I'm going to talk about it, JP, because people are saying you're just flogging a dead horse with these awards. Paddy brought it up. Well, the way this works is you're kind of taken by surprise, and I guess being involved with the bands and stuff like that, JP, you'll have been in similar situations where you get contacted and you're told you're in the finals of this awards ceremony. We didn't even get that. We weren't even informed that we were in it. It's just someone texted us and tweeted us or something. You're like, wow, that's tremendous. So I announced that we've got a nomination for an award, and then Kelvin, who's the videographer in the studio, says, no, actually, we're in 2 categories. And then somebody else tells us we're in 3. So I was so excited to announce it. I didn't even look through all the categories, just thought, wow, we've scraped into the charitable one. Brilliant. Excellent. And then you're invited down to London. But unfortunately, I think because they're probably missing at least 1 year's worth of finance, I'm talking about the awards company, there's no complimentaries or anything available to anyone. So, it's basically a wee email out or a WhatsApp out to the group who is up for this, and not everybody can jump on a training while we're down to London for a night, with all their other responsibilities. But we are hoping that we've got a wee squad going down, maybe 5 or 6 strong. And hopefully we can bring an award up. What I've started doing, JP, I should have been doing it 3 weeks ago. I've got the link in the bottom of the video. So if you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, there is a link. Click it. And if you can give us a vote, it would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for bringing that up, Paddy. I really appreciate it. Gerald McEwen, also watching on YouTube. Whoever starts, I'm sure we'll see some rip-roaring, free-scoring, never boring football. Borrowed Tony Haggerty's phrase, and you should borrow it. It's a great phrase. But there are a few other dilemmas. Now, we've been talking about the centre-half situation. I was probably a bit premature in my comments around Liam Scales when it became clear that we were going to be bringing him in from Shamrock Rovers. Now, it really wasn't down to the fact that I was looking down my nose at any other league, JP. I just felt that he looked like the type of signing that in the past we might have called a project signing. Someone who you bring in who you don't maybe think is first team ready, and who gets up to speed over a period of months and then he starts getting bled into the team. And we've done it so often in the past. And I think that's where Liam Shaw is, and I think that's where Osaze Urhoghide is. And I felt that maybe Liam Scales is the same. But instantly, when I said that, I was informed, you're wrong. This guy is first team ready. So where do you think he is in the pecking order? I mean, we've been speaking about Taylor being out. Do you think we might see an appearance for Liam Scales, left back?
I do. I think it would be. There's no point in playing Juranović. The Juranović thing at Ibrox was obviously a needs must, because I think putting Montgomery in there, 50,000 Rangers fans, I know that as a football player you have to, deal with whatever's thrown at you. I still would say that about, the Saka thing and Saka taking the penalty for England. It's like he's a striker, he's in the squad. What are you going to do? Hide? You've got to do the job that's asked of you. It just so happened that was a final and it was a crucial penalty and blah blah blah. But he had to take it. But it's the same thing, sort of, with Montgomery. But I can understand why he didn't want to throw Montgomery into the lion's den, even though there's no lion's den, though, is there? Brilliant. So there was that, but. I think because Scales has been playing, you and I both know Scales has been playing. He's been playing in Europa League qualifiers for Shamrock Rovers, scored in one of them, decent header. And the more people I've heard talk about this is that he will probably suit Ange Postecoglou's system as being a guy that can come in and go into the middle and sort of end up playing sort of inside an inside half, if that's what it's called. I don't know. I'm not an expert on football tactics and never have claimed to be, but I've read a bit about him as a player and read about what people have said about him who've watched him, and you don't think that you'd get people, you know, seemingly saying in tweets or whatever, saying, look, I've seen this guy play. He can play, you know, and normally when people say that, you tend to take them with a bit of authority, you know, like rather than it just being like throwaway or wishful thinking or something like that. Like I actually do think, I mean, the fact that we've given the number 5 straight away makes you think that there's been faith put in him by the club and by the manager. And so, yeah, I think there's every chance he'll play on Saturday, possibly with a view to playing on Thursday as well, because you don't want to just throw him in on Thursday in Spain. I know that may not faze him at all, but I watched his interview with Celtic, and I like the cut of his jib. And I know Russell has said this before, you know, remember we were talking about Stepping Stone FC and all of that. You get the feeling that Liam Scales is, you know, delighted to be at Celtic and realises that it's a massive opportunity, and he's not just thinking one eye on the Premier League or whatever. He's thinking, no, I'm at Celtic. This is amazing. You know, like I've got a Celtic badge on my chest. You know, this is a big deal. So that type of player who has already got pedigree and has already got skill is the type of player you want at Celtic, isn't it? You want somebody that's you know, going to ask for another brick wall to run through after he's run through the first one. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, in the past, I think we have brought players in with no real fanfare who have gone on to be established members of the Celtic side. I think once you get into the transfer window, maybe we're all a bit guilty of looking for the kind of bigger name players coming in. And maybe I was guilty of that when Liam Scales, you're thinking he's coming for Shamrock Rovers. He's played all his football in Ireland. Perhaps he's a project. And then, you know, 23-year-old, you know, you think, why has he not made that move yet? I think I'm going to be proven wrong, and I'll be delighted to be proven wrong. But when you're looking at playing players in their positions, which I think is an absolute necessity if you can, and you play him at left back due to the injury of Greg Taylor, then it gives you another dilemma, a secondary dilemma at right back. So would Ralston rather feel as though he's being dropped or just rested? Because let's be honest, he's done nothing in terms of his performance to merit being dropped. And I think that if Ange Postecoglou has that mentality amongst the squad, then he misses the game against Ross County, maybe so that Juranović could come in and play at right back in his natural position. But that would only be due to the fact that we can't play Juranović at left back because we're going to be playing a naturally left-sided player at left back. Although, given all these reasons, and it makes sense, there will still be a sense of disappointment if Ralston doesn't get that right back jersey, I would feel. Which is wild that we are saying that. I know. But maybe the ideal scenario is, you know, obviously the ideal scenario would be to go a couple of goals up against Ross County and put the game to bed, and then sub Ralston and bring Juranović on and give him, you know, and give Ralston. So you're giving Ralston a run out. He's got minutes in the legs, to coin the old phrase, and then Ralston starts on Thursday. I mean, because again, it would be really harsh on Ralston. Ralston was great at Ibrox. I didn't think he put a foot wrong, really. Like, you can't blame him for anything bad that happened in the game. The goal was a goal. It was a clever goal because they crowded out. They crowded out the centre halves and had an extra man at the back who's probably one of the biggest men in the pitch, and he just, you know, got in there, and it was, I don't know if it was tactical or not. But if it was, then fair play, you know. But it wasn't. There's no blame apportioned to. I think everybody wanted to blame Starfelt, but I don't blame Starfelt for that goal. I blame the fact that they had a bigger centre half. I don't think it was a disastrous corner. It was a decent ball in, and they took their chance, and that was what won the game for them. So, you know, on another day, Eddie puts that goal in. I mean, you could see how gutted Eddie was when he missed that. You know, I still don't subscribe to this Eddie wasn't trying patter, because you could see he was gutted, and what a thing that would have been to leave us with. You know, have I been on since Eddie left? Yeah, I have, because that was last week, wasn't it?
Because we spoke about the Stone Roses Crystal Palace video.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, but I know. I think maybe that's the answer: is Ralston starts and then see how the game goes, and then bring Juranović on and give Juranović a run out at Celtic Park, and then he's got minutes in his legs as well, because I don't know if he was involved in international duty over the course. He must have been. If he was starting against Scotland in the Euros, he must have been in the Czech set up. So, but Ralston hasn't played, has he? Ralston's not played.
No, and he was actually, overlooked when Nathan Patterson dropped out. He was overlooked due to the fact that there was medical reasons that he wasn't pulled into the Scotland squad. So it could well be something that, is a decision that's taken out of Angie's hands. But Josip Juranović, he's got 13 caps for Croatia since 2017. So, he's a fairly regular contributor in recent times, certainly since making his debut a few years back. But again, that could well be a decision that's taken out of Angie's hands if indeed it's a COVID-related issue, for example. But when we're looking throughout the whole team, there are these dilemmas, and it will be interesting to see how we line up. There's a few other players I would like to see more of, but I'm going to be bringing up as many comments as I possibly can. And we have Follow Celtic, who supports Acsom and has done for a long, long time. You're commenting on Twitter via Periscope, bouncing for the game, bring on the newbies. It's always good to see new signings. Talking about first European games, I forgot to say, I was trying to think what my first European game was, and I'm sure it was Geminal Ekeren. Neuchâtel Xamax at home 1-0. Was it even the same season? Listen, I need to check Celtic Wiki. But yeah, they're two games that I remember from the kind of early 90s period where we were going through a very tough patch. But in terms of Europe, one or two rounds was your max. I mean, even the centenary season, you think I was getting bounced out by Borussia Dortmund. Yeah. And people look back fondly and, Derek White and Andy Walker scoring, and we beat them 2-1. Murdo McLeod's playing for Borussia Dortmund. But we're getting bounced out of Europe in the first and the second rounds back then. I didn't see European football beyond Christmas until Martin O'Neill, probably. You're talking the whole of the 90s, and then Martin O'Neill, it must have been post 2003, maybe Seville was the first time. I don't know. I can't remember if we went further beyond Seville. Further beyond Christmas before Seville. That's a good pub quiz question if ever there was one. But Seville might be that time. So that's me being supporting Celtic for like 15 years at that point, and I hadn't seen us beyond Christmas in Europe. Pretty sad state of affairs. It is, because it's your timeline and it's just your point of reference. But I remember when I started going myself to the games, no matter where you are in terms of your point of reference, you get fed the stories of the great European nights and the Lisbon Lions, and you learn the team line, just it flows off the tongue like the alphabet, and if you don't know Simpson, Craig, Gemmell, Murdoch, McNeil, etc., then you're even a Celtic fan. That was always a kind of attitude. But you're going to watch these really inept Celtic sides and you're hearing about all these great stories, and then you start digging about. And the last time post Christmas that we had been in Europe, when I started going in 87, was 1980. And it was Real Madrid in the quarter-final of the European Cup, where we beat them 2-0 at home, goal scored by George McCluskey and the late Johnny Doyle. We go over to the Bernabeu and they beat us 3-0. And they bounce us out 3-2. And I've interviewed a couple of the players that was involved in that tie. And they reckon that, the referee was on the take over in Spain. And they said, that was one of the things that back then was happening. Players were going to clubs and managers were passing brown envelopes here, there and everywhere. And they said, it also happened on the kind of refereeing level as well. But, 3-2 against Real Madrid back then, Johnny Doyle scoring at Celtic Park. We had Paul McQuaid in here just the other week talking about the new biography of Johnny Doyle. So we'll have that video up very, very soon. We've been kind of busy, JP, with all the festival footage last week, so we've not been able to get it out, but hopefully we'll get it out in the next few days. We've also got an interview with Brian McClare out there in the studio for a chat show that I've started up called Tartan Taste Buds. And we do have him sampling some bizarre Scottish delicacies, and we talk about football and politics and music, and Chalky's just
He's
great.
amazing.
He's great. He actually mentioned you when he seen the Twilight Sad thing out there. So we've got loads of good shows coming up, and going back to Sunshine on Leith, I interviewed Gary John Kane, big Celtic man, bass player out of the Proclaimers, but he also runs Button Up Records, and his band is called Button Up, and I've got an interview coming out from him as well. So loads of good interviews with a wee Celtic tinge here and there where I can, JP, as you always do. But when we're talking about the possible lineup on Saturday, another thing I'd like to throw in there, it's kind of twofold, I guess, is when I was on yesterday talking to Patrick, we spoke about the midfield position, and we had a discussion about the fact that I think that was the one area that we probably could have brought in another player. And one of the names that we spoke about was Ali McCann. And you're looking at the transfer fee, and you're thinking, well, Celtic could quite easily have, gone toe-to-toe with Preston on the fee. It was, I think, on the same day that Christie went for £2.5 million to Bournemouth. And obviously we're up in terms of transfer fees. I know that's not ring-fenced within the realms of you will spend all that money. But we could have gone in for Ali McCann, and he's gone down to Preston instead for just over £1 million. And I think that's a right good bargain Preston have got in their hands there. Earlier on in the season, I spoke up about Lewis Ferguson. I like him. I think he's a good player. But let's not forget about James McCarthy, who's come in. He's played 2 games, kind of cameo roles against Hearts and AZ Alkmaar. We've not really seen him, what he can do. But I've been saying, that I think he's going to be a player that will be a big player for Ange this season. I think he's going to, once he gets into his stride, JP gets back up to match fitness. We know that he didn't do a pre-season with a team. He did it on his own. So it's maybe to be expected that he's not quite there yet. Is this the type of game? And then I'm going to also flip it, just with the spirit of Boyce there. I'm going to flip it and ask, what on earth is happening to Ismaila Soro? So there's the 2 midfielders I want to talk about before we get into the wingers. So James McCarthy, should we expect to see him maybe on Saturday? Is it a fitness issue? I mean, he's certainly had plenty of rest over the international break.
I would be surprised if he started, to be fair. I'd hope for his sake and for our sake that he's, over whatever it is that's been bothering him, and if it's an injury or fitness or what. But I'd like to see him involved to start, possibly, but I think it would be maybe asking a bit much when you've not really done that much in the last few weeks. So maybe another one where he comes off the bench and gets a good half an hour, 40 minutes towards the end of the half, depending on how the game's going. I think you're right. I think McCarthy could and should be an important signing. It's just, it was just such a long, protracted saga to get him here. He was linked every single transfer window, and now he's actually here. You don't want it to be another one of these signings where he comes in, it doesn't, just didn't work out. I would hate that to be the case, because there is part of you that has the feeling that it might go that way because of his lack of football in the last few seasons, and his age, his fitness, everything else. So I want to see him do well. He's a Celtic fan. You always, when a Celtic fan pulls on a jersey, you always want, there's that little bit more of you wants him to do well. And his reception when he came on at Celtic Park, obviously you get from the stadium that everybody's willing him to do well. Republic Ireland International, etc. But Soro's a weird one. I think when Soro came into the side and everybody was like, I forget Scott Brown, Soro's the future.
Yeah.
I remember at the time thinking, I don't think he is. I think he's an okay player, but I don't think we've won a watch here in terms of we've plucked this guy out of nowhere, and we've stolen a march on so many other teams by getting this guy and nobody else knew who he was. I think he showed even early on in his Celtic career he was quite erratic, and niggly fouls, giving away fouls, always looks like a certainty to get booked in the first 10-15 minutes of a game. He's just a bit kind of loose. He's not somebody that I would, in these Europa League games, for example, I wouldn't trust Ismaila Soro as being that guy in the middle of the park. to go up against a Betis or a Leverkusen. I just don't think he's not at that level. I mean, he's yet to even prove if he's at league level over a course, over a course of like 2 or 3 months where you're playing, Saturday or Sunday and then playing on a Tuesday and all that. You've not seen Soro being a name in the team sheet throughout that time. And I just don't know if Ange Postecoglou, maybe it's complete speculation. I have no idea, but I don't know if he necessarily rates him as a sort of guy that he's going to want to have about.
You're allowed to speculate.
I know.
We're allowed to speculate. This is the thing. Everything that comes out of your mouth doesn't have to be fact, as long as you're not selling it as fact.
No, I'm not.
Because we get picked up for having opinions here and there, so that's why I'm underlining that. Yeah. But my big thing with Soro, he comes in, around about the Patrick Klimala time, and you think, well, again, project signings. They're of the kind of similar age. They're going to maybe develop under the radar, which, you thought about Soro because he was nowhere near the first team. And then all of a sudden, he's thrown in on that famous occasion where Turnbull kind of comes of age and against Lille, a very good Lille side. They proved that season. Very, very, very good side. And I also thought that night that Conor Hazard played pretty well, and Ewan Henderson, who doesn't seem to get a look in at the minute, he played really well that night as well. But the thing with Soro is, although those attributes that was shown in that first clutch of games, and then I think the wheels came off it a wee bit when he got food poisoning for the Scottish Cup final. Oh, yeah. And we were really, really disappointed. At that stage in December there, we're playing Hearts and we're really gutted that he's out the side, because you're thinking he's at that point, one of the best performers for Celtic. And you're thinking that you've got the Turnbull effect, you've got the Soro effect, and maybe the season will turn around. You kept thinking that maybe something would turn the season around, and that could have been it. And inevitably it was not. But what I've seen, particularly since the departure of Neil Lennon, and more so since Ange Postecoglou came in, JP, is two things. If we want to play this free-flowing football, you can't keep breaking up the game, not the play, breaking up the game by giving away daft fouls. And he does that a hell of a lot. He's very reckless with his challenges, to the point where he's almost challenging the ref to give him a booking. He'll do it 4 or 5 times until he's in the book. But what you're doing in that, so there is such a good thing as a good foul. If you're looking back, you're thinking, right, I'm just going to take you out. I know I maybe get a booking here, but I'm breaking up this attack because, they're on the counter. But I think he's very reckless in his challenges. Another thing is his ball retention doesn't seem to be as good as I thought it was when he first came into the side, because I just thought the boy never loses the ball. No matter what happens, he always finds a man. I don't see that as much now. And it would be good, because this is an observational view, it would be good if someone looked at the stats, because it seems as though he loses, possession a hell of a lot. And again, these are two key areas of Ange Postecoglou's game. And I think that's maybe why he hasn't featured as much as we would have expected, given his performances last season. So it will be interesting to see if he plays a part. And I am hoping that James McCarthy plays a part. A brilliant point has came into the section, the comment section, and it's from a friend of the pod, Jungle Lion, who has promised at some point, if we go over to Ireland, that we can do a live Acsom broadcast from his den. I don't know if it's called the Lion's Den, but his den, which, if you look at his Twitter page, is very much right up our street in terms of Celtic memorabilia. Paul McGrath was 22 when he left St. Pat's and more or less walked straight into the Man U team. Paul McGrath. Anybody that wants to mention him, I'm going to have to go on a wee diversion here and talk about Paul McGrath, because I think there's a clutch of players, particularly in the 80s and 90s, JP, that I would have loved to have seen wearing the green and white hoops of Celtic. And Paul McGrath was one of them. Great point, by the way, Jungle Lion. I'm now going on a tangent, but that was a great point. Yeah, coming in from the Irish League and going into the Man U side. Paul McGrath, incidentally, if you've not read his book, Back from the Brink, make sure you read it. The best football book I've ever read. Absolutely astonishing story. But he, on 2 occasions, had an opportunity to sign for Celtic. And I sometimes think, Billy McNeill wanted to sign him, and Liam Brady later wanted to sign him. Had Billy McNeill signed Paul McGrath for Celtic, I imagine a defence of Paul Elliott and Paul McGrath. And it's margins, isn't it? It's just margins, because
does 9 in a row happen?
It's just mind-boggling.
Does the sieve continue to be called the Civ if you've got Paul McGrath there. Unlikely, I would have thought.
I know.
And
he came up to Celtic Park. He writes about it in his book. He actually came up to Celtic Park when Billy McNeill was in charge. And the other occasion I've heard from a couple of people who were actually at the meeting as Celtic went down and met him in Manchester, and Tom Grant, the former director, told me that story. So they were looking to sign Paul McGrath. I would have loved to have seen it.
Aye. Well, I mean, that's a good point. Players coming from Irish football, obviously Dennis Irwin to United and Roy Keane to United. Well, Roy Keane is Nottingham Forest first and then United. It's not to be sniffed at, I don't think. It's like when people say when players leave our league and go elsewhere, they sort of downplay our league. Although Christopher Ayer's comments this week
what do you make of that?
Have not gone down well. I mean, there's been so many, I've seen on Twitter, so many people just retweeting his comments and then putting in little clips of him having an absolute nightmare against, Hearts' left back. I saw that one, and I think it was from the cup final. I know he scored the penalty, fair play, but his defensive qualities at times were questionable. So to suddenly think, oh, well, now I'm in the Premier League, that was beneath me. It's kind of like, man, just have a bit of respect about the league.
A wee bit of humility.
Aye, totally. Wait, I mean, I know these things can sometimes get taken out of context or whatever, and it's just that was just an image with a quote attributed to Christopher Ayer. I've got no idea of the context of the rest of the interview, but it doesn't read well because, it's just you clearly thought you were miles better than this league, and I think he is better than this league, but how far is yet to be determined. Ask me in 2 years about how far away he is from the Scottish League, and see where he is. Will he still be at Brentford? Because if he is still at Brentford, then he's not done that great, has he? Because he's not. He's clearly thinking Brentford's my next step, and then there'll be a step after that, like Van Dijk or whatever. Not that I'm saying for a second that he was. I always stuck up for Christopher Ayer. I said, based on the transfers and transfer windows and fees and everything else, I said at one point last year, we should be looking for 20 to 25 million for Christopher Ayer. And we ended up getting, 13 and a half with
Rising,
with a year left of his contract.
Yeah.
So a fully paid up contracted Christopher Ayer could probably have gone for 20 to 25 million, you'd have thought. So to get that money in
pre-COVID as well.
Aye, oh yeah, totally as well. Aye, that's affected everything. So, aye.
The thing with Chris Ayer with me is we never really have spats. Well, there's been a couple on Acsom, but differences of views, and I've had a difference of view in relation to Leo Connor and Luke O'Connell with Colin Watt. Tony and I disagree on the virtues of Chris Ayer as a defender, and I totally get that, because every single time we were predicting scores, I always said first goal would be Chris Ayer with a thunderous header or something like that, and it's never going to happen. And I get all that, but I remember quite an early filmed Acsom that I did with Kevin Graham, who I think right now will be speaking to the aforementioned Liam Scales about his arrival at Celtic. And Kevin and I had a wee chat about Chris Ayer, and I spoke about Chris Ayer being a potential £10 million sale for Celtic. And at that time, it was kind of maybe appearing a bit premature, JP. It was like, really? Do you honestly think so? And it's one of the ones that I don't get to do that often, but it was like a told you so moment when I then spoke to Kevin and says, well, he did develop into that player. But bigger than that for me is I remember the last international break looking at a friendly game that Norway were playing and going through their squad, and there was half a dozen players in the Norway squad who had been partly developed or given their debuts by Ronny Deila. And I remember looking at that, and obviously, Chris Ayer was one of those players who got his... he got going at Celtic under Ronny Deila. Martin Odegaard, the famous Martin Odegaard, who was away to Real Madrid and he spent time at Arsenal, etc. But there were others. There was half a dozen players. And I just think that the legacy of Ronny is in player sales like Chris Ayer and player sales like Kieran Tierney, for example. And even the fact that we're talking about Tony Ralston as being a first pick right back. Who gave him his debut? Ronny. Now, I'm not trying to rewrite history here, JP, and our captain, Callum McGregor, who gave him his debut? Ronny Deila. And I'm not trying to rewrite history, but I just think that, again, had things been slightly different, we could have really seen the benefit of his talent spotting skills, which I think are immense. When you look at the success he's had in helping players along in their careers, obviously he coached Van Dijk. He had a part to play in his development, spoke about it, said he had to live his life better. We spoke to Ronnie Deila on this podcast a couple of years ago, and he spoke about Van Dijk quite openly. His lifestyle was wrong when Ronnie joined Celtic, and he got him into this way of thinking where you're a 24-hour athlete. And you know what happened to Van Dijk. And it's down to Van Dijk, but obviously people along the way have helped him. And I think Ronnie Deila has been one of those guys. And I just feel that he probably should never have been Celtic's manager, but we should have definitely gone and got him and got him into the club, because there was a lot of things he did well. I just don't think he was that focal point. He was the manager. Did you see the pictures of him in the New York CSC? Must have been at stupid o'clock in the morning. And he's wearing the strip that he was when he was the manager. That was our home strip. I think it had signatures on it as well. I'm not sure who'd signed it or whatever, but what a character. I had a lot of time for him. I was kind of on board. I got my season ticket back in 2013. Actually, checked my Facebook memories today, and today's the day that I got my season ticket posted to me 8 years ago. So I'd been in the wilderness for four years after having a season ticket for 10 years, and then I had a 4-year hiatus, and then today's the day that I got my season ticket back in the North Stand, and I've been there ever since. So all through the Deila time, and I just like this. I like to see a guy with enthusiasm for the job, and I think he appreciated the post, and certainly seeing him, now and beyond being at Celtic, he's obviously still a fan, and why would you go to a bar in New York? He's never said a bad word about Celtic or Scottish football. No. And I think that it took its toll on Ronnie Deila. It really took its toll, the job. And as Celtic fans, we look back fondly on him. There's a few other dilemmas on that team line for Saturday, JP, and one of them is obviously due to the fact that Kyogo was injured, and we hope that he's fit. I mean, we've not had an update. We really hope that he's fit. All it takes is probably a press conference today with the media, and Ange will be asked the question about who's fit and who's not after the international break, and Kyogo is the one that's on everybody's lips at the moment. So I'm thinking, and I said this yesterday, we showed most of the video footage. I was going to show you the rest today, but once you and I get talking about Celtic and music, no chance. We will show the clips at some point on the socials though. I'm thinking of this three-pronged attack of Kyogo being the centre point of that, Abad on the right and Jota on the left. And I just think in terms of potential, we were talking about your first European game. We've been speaking about the three amigos. Talk about three amigos. There's three true ballers right there. And that fills me with a lot of excitement. If we can get all three of them firing on all cylinders, JP. Oh, no, definitely. And just when you were laying it out there, I was just thinking of the song. We've got Abada on the wing, and Kyogo doing his thing, and now you've got Jota, who is a bit of an unknown quantity for us, but I've heard a bit about him. At one point, maybe a year or two ago, he was being rated as 9 million or whatever like that. So maybe Jota is a Portuguese version of a player like, say, Chris Sutton or Scott Sinclair or something like that. A player that's just maybe lost his way a little bit at a club and then needs to find the right place. Because you're not talking about that with Colin recently on a podcast where I think it was the Sunday one, you did the impromptu one where you were talking about how sometimes players just don't fit in at a club and then they go elsewhere and they become mainstays and end up being, a legend or a regular at least. So Jota might be one of those guys, and I hope he is. I mean, we've not. I don't think we've got much wrong in the transfer market so far, from what I can see as a fan. Looking at what they've done in the window since it opened, that there's no real obvious. Everyone's going on about Starfelt. I don't think Starfelt's a bad player. I think we just give him time. If in a year's time everybody's still saying things about him, then fine. But I just think he'll be all right. But everybody else seems to be okay. And obviously Jota's brand new to the equation. But if he can do on the left what Abada can do on the right, then I would be a bit concerned if I was a
a centre half or a right back, because he'll terrorise them.
No, you're right. And you're talking about Starfelt there. I think one point to make is that when he's doing the defensive side of the game, he does that well. Mm-hmm. I always think that the only heart in the mouth moment you get with Starfelt is where he's got the ball at his feet and a wee bit too much time to think about it. Mm-hmm. And we've seen the same, and I'm not comparing them before you think I am. We've seen the same with Duffy. Duffy was probably not used to having the ball at his feet as much as he did when he came to Celtic, and he was just the wrong fit. He was the wrong fit, and that's what happens with players. I think the example I gave previously, the two great examples you've just given with Sutton and Sinclair, being revitalised by coming to Celtic. Timu Pukki. Yeah. I remember watching him. He scored a couple of goals in the game he played at Murrayfield under Ronnie Dyler. The 4-2 game, was it 4-2 that day? 4-0 at Murrayfield. And you're looking at him thinking, maybe we're at that point where you think maybe he will be a player for Celtic. But he just never really got going. And he's gone on to be an unbelievable player for Norwich. So, these things happen. But the big question for me, if Kyogo's injured, we've then got another dilemma on the park. Do you throw in Giakoumakis or do you play Albion Ajeti?
I think he's more likely to play Ajeti, I would have thought. I mean, Ajeti, I can't remember what game was it recently where Ajeti came on and won the ball, which led to a goal. Was it at Celtic Park?
I think it was St Mirren, was it?
Yeah, and I know the least you expect is commitment and putting yourself about when you come on. That's what you want to see from a substitute anyway. But I would, him coming on at least shows that the manager's got some faith in him because he's got minutes. He's in the squad, he's in and about, and he's getting time. So you'd think that based on maybe just even that cameo appearance, that he would get a start against, no disrespect, but Ross County in the league at home. I'm sorry, but if you're a footballer and a striker for Celtic who's cost £5 million and you can't get a start in a game like that at the weekend, then there's no point in you being there, really, is there? Like, let's face it, you should be looking for a move in January. If Kyogo is out injured, Ajeti's got it. You'd think, in the natural process of players coming in and getting bedded in, you'd feel pretty hard done by if you were Albion Ajeti if you got bounced out for a guy that's literally just in the door.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a good point, and I think the case of Ajeti, we've spoken about the case of other players in terms of where they're going to be standing. Jungle Lions points just popped up there. It was such a good point. It came up by itself. But the case of Ajeti, I think that if he hasn't made an impact by January, then it's going to be, you give him the benefit of the doubt. You think, right, he's going to be working under a completely different manager who seems to have a bit of faith in him. He comes back talking about faith. There's got to be some kind of keep the faith. You got to keep the who knows, with George Michael and Jota. Somebody out there who is far more creative than me will come up with something. And what you've got there is a player who might have looked as though Ange could have turned his career around at Celtic, in the early games. I know we watched the friendlies. He was given the captain's armband. He scores the first goal under Ange.
Yeah.
He looks
seems
fitter.
like ages ago, doesn't it?
I know. He looks leaner.
Jesus.
But it's not quite got going. We've gone out, we've signed a player who was a top goal scorer in Dutch football last season. So, if Ajeti doesn't make an impact in the coming months and up until January, you're then looking at, it's best for all parties to move him on at that stage. Unfortunately, because you look at the pedigree before he comes to Celtic, other than a spell at West Ham, and he's obviously got something, it just might not be the right fit, JP.
Well, I mean, Edouard's gone, Griffiths is gone. There's opportunities there. There's got to be. He's now part of an elite band of players that are strikers for Celtic. There's not many of them, is there? I mean, we've got Kyogo Furuhashi, Giakoumakis, Ajeti, and who else?
That's really it.
As a striker.
Yeah, you're then playing, I know Abada and Jota can play through the middle, but you're playing guys out of their natural positions then.
Yeah, I know Jota said he can play through the middle or as a false nine or whatever, but he's been signed as a winger. Surely that's what all the stuff I've read is that he's a winger. So to start playing him up front, he doesn't look like a striker at all. Ajeti is now got a clear path in front of him. He's not got Edouard in front of him anymore. He never really had Griffiths in front of him. So it's up to him. Let's see what he can do.
The time is now. Always an absolute pleasure, JP. We're going to go away and film something now, so look out for that, because
in the rain,
if it's still raining outside, look out for that. That'll be on the channel and on the socials by Monday. Got to thank everybody for all your votes, all your support for Acsom. It's an absolute pleasure to put the Bulletin out on a daily basis and cover all the games, even though it means I can't get to the games at the moment. Which is unfortunate, JP, but we'll find a way somehow.
Need to find a way for that.
We'll find a way. I remember there was one year actually, and I looked at, due to the work that I was doing at the time, the amount of games I missed on my season ticket, and it was horrific. You know,
when you used to take the paper out, when you used to rip the pages out.
As far back as that. I wish I could find it, because it was in a cracking wee kind of like plastic faux leather wallet, my first season ticket.
I've got it.
Which the 20-minute Tim's boys have started sending out to their subscribers. And I commented that as a cracking bit of merch, because it took me back to like 1994.
Yeah.
And I also had an ID card, JP, because I was under 16. I had an ID card, which was just like, that you would put on a lanyard or something, but it was part of the season ticket. But I don't know where it is. It'll be in a loft somewhere. But thanks everybody for getting involved. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube. You could win one of these fantastic concept jerseys. I'm saying they're fantastic. JP, what's your favourite of the four?
They are all minted. Do you know what? I'm
liking this one.
See, I want like the green one next to that, the one right behind you, just because it kind of looks like the Love Street kit. But not as shiny, but they look cracking just because it's embroidered badges, isn't it? It's like
old school.
Yeah, class.
Retro, that's what we like. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and join us again tomorrow. Tune in at 12:30 for A Celtic State of Mind.